Hey, everybody, welcome back to the 10X Real Estate Warrior Nation's Virtual Summit 2021. I'm so excited today to actually introduce to you one of the most humble mentors I've ever had over the years and still have, thank God, Al Stasek. Al Stasek is the head of the Stasek Group out of Cleveland, Ohio. He also works at eXp Realty, where they're helping people buy, sell, and invest in homes. He's got a huge team under him, both virtually and also in Cleveland, out of his home office, which is amazing. It's going to be one of the guys that you're going to want to learn from if you're looking to build a team and build an organization from the ground up. Not only does he have guys like me in his downline or all over the country, but he's also got a team right in his hometown that he's working with on a daily basis. One of the interesting things is the more research that I did on Al to try to give you an introduction, the less I could find about Al, the more I could find about what he's doing for his team, what he's doing for his community, what he's doing for his agents. It's amazing that, they actually put everybody else first. And if you look at his website, there's nothing about Al. Intriguingly enough, they've helped serve over 100,000 meals annually through hunger and also in Cleveland. I know he does a huge benefit with a bunch of bands and stuff like that. One of the things I wanted to bring to your attention, though, is he's got a set of core values that I think are intriguing. I've adopted a lot of these from coaching with Al over the years. So if you've seen some of my posts on social media or heard it on my podcast, you're going to appreciate where it came from. So 100-0, we believe in accepting 100% of responsibility in all situations and zero excuses, rejecting the victim mentality. We use 100-0 as our personal filter by asking ourselves, what can I do differently today? The next thing is, what would you say if you were going to do? So do what you're saying you're going to do. Hey, laugh and have fun, add value, create raving fans, believe in yourself and your team, be humble, be coachable, learn like you're going to live forever. And best of all, you're the best on the team. You're the very best person. Al Stasek, come on in.
Hey, Sean.
What's up, brother?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
I am awesome. I meant every word of that. The more I tried to research you, which I'm not surprised, by the way, after working with you probably now 10 years or so, the less I could find about Al, the more I could find about everything you're doing and everything you're being. So tell people, tell us everybody, who is Al Stasek and how'd you get started in the real estate business?
Well, Sean, I got started, by, I guess you could say, default or accident. My father was a real estate agent part-time. He worked on the docks, in a union job that he really hated. And then he would come home, he'd put on his gold Century 21 coat and march out. This is in the 80s, Sure. It was tough. Interest rates were super, super high, but, he went out and did it just so that we could, have money for vacations and whatnot. But I sat up in his office many a night hanging out with him, because when he'd come home from his 9 to 5, he'd come home, shave, shower. If he didn't have any appointments, he was up in our office making cold calls. He'd pick a street a night and he would just straight up call. It was called the Haynes Directory. I don't even know if they still have that anymore.
The book, the infamous reverse directory. It was a reverse directory is what it was called.
When these didn't exist, and we had actually real phones hanging from the wall. And I remember sitting on the floor next to my dad and getting hung up on, rejected. He got swore at, and it was painful for me to watch. And so I swore I would never be a real estate agent, and so that was my mindset.
Funny how that works.
It is, but as not luck would have it, I wouldn't use that word. I would just say as my journey started to transform, I dropped out of Cleveland State University. That wasn't for me. I started a career as an over-the-road truck driver. I did that for a few years, and then I just had, kind of an opportunity to say, all right, what do I want to do with my life? And I didn't really have many options. I wasn't very hireable. I didn't have a degree or anything like that.
Right.
I could speak to people, and I said, well, if I was going to sell, I would want, and this is just how caveman my mind is. I'd say, what's the highest ticket sales item that I could sell? Number one, and number two, is it part of the needs of our, our
right.
needs as human beings? We need shelter. So that's how I picked it. Plus, my dad was doing it. He saw some success on a part-time basis. So I figured, hey, I'll give this a whirl. I signed up for real estate classes. I was licensed in 1998. And so, for me, it was a journey of always just trying to figure out a better way, just figure out how to grow this, and very, very money driven at I guess the first half of my career, and just really figuring out how to sell more houses. And
I remember when I was transitioning to the company we're at now, and ironically enough, I could remember you saying, I kept saying, like how, because I'm like so analytical, and obviously that from working with me. And all you kept saying was the strategy, that we have a strategy. Tell us more about that. And, I think that's important to help people understand, strategy over in some cases, over fighting your way or grinding. So what do you think the strategy was that, if you said, all right, so you get in real estate, you take over what your dad was doing. Now you're by yourself. You have a team. Where did it go from there?
Well, I kind of grew up in a bit of an environment where it was looked at in a positive light to grind.
Yep.
And, I started, really getting around a different group of people, and what they did, Mike Reese, Jay Kinder, John Sheplack, some of my coaches. And it was the question is, maybe we should be asking a better question, not how can we work longer, harder, and get on this treadmill and run faster and do more transactions. Sure, that that's a lot of our goals, right? But the real question shouldn't be where's my next transaction or sale coming from. The different question, which changed my mindset, was how do we develop a system, a repeatable system that we can put in place that'll churn and fill a pipeline, and now put a system together to feed others, so that we can start building an organization and help other people become successful, but do it in a systematic way. To where
so let me back up for a second. You just hit on about 9 different things from Sunday to help people, and I want to break this down because some of our agents are at 0, some of our agents are at 100 deals, other people are in between somewhere. And I actually remember that shift, because I remember when I first talked to you, it was okay. How many contacts are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, hey, Al, I was coaching with those other people in that other environment too. And here's my numbers. And you're like, I don't care about your numbers. Tell me about your, your pillars of income, or where are you generating leads from? And I was like, what are you talking about? I said, well, I call expireds, I call for sale by owners. And you're like, no. And it forced us to ask the question. And this is an interesting question for you, is if they made prospecting on the telephone illegal or door knocking illegal, how could you generate business in this environment, or any environment for that matter? And that's where, guys like Shiplak and Jay and all those guys started doing stuff outside the box. So what's one of the number one things that you guys do? I know you do an event every year, right? You're with the bands and all that. What's that event that you guys do every year?
That's Rock and Restock. That's our
right. How many years have you been doing that?
Since 2015. We missed 1 year when we actually had to transition when I moved my brokerage to eXp Realty in 2017. That took up a lot of time of that particular summer and transitioning.
Sure, yeah.
We missed that year, and actually we missed 2020 because of the pandemic. But right. all the other years we've done it.
So just so that people can get perspective on that, how many people show up to that event?
The last one, I think we had 700.
700.
It's basically a rock. I love music, and if there's ever an opportunity that I can combine, something having to do with giving back to the community and charity with something I like to do, which is fun, which is go to live shows.
Right.
Then one of my good friends, Chad Goldwasser, he's actually down in Austin, Texas. Chad was a friend of mine that I met at a Kinder Reese conference. Actually, he was a speaker. And we ended up becoming really good friends. Chad is actually the founder of Rock and Restock. He started it in Austin, Texas, for the Austin Food Bank. And he was kind enough to let me borrow, duplicate, steal it with his permission.
Right. The greatest success is when you steal somebody else's.
Kind of duplicated it in Cleveland.
So when you guys duplicated that in Cleveland, tell us about some of the byproducts. Some people always say, "Oh, it's all about the money. It's about this. It's about that." How many people did you feed out of that mess?
Yeah, I mean, we don't make any money. This is a 100% charity event.
Right.
I make the initial investment personally.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a sweat making, selling them tickets.
Right.
Here's what I learned. People buy tickets to events at the last minute.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a real estate event or a concert for charity or whatever.
So now you
have a blast doing it.
let's talk about it. Let's talk about the other side of that, like what I call soft dollar advertising. How many times have you now gotten a phone call or somebody says, "Oh my God, you're the guys who do the stock, the rock and restock." When your team is out there communicating with the community, how much, are people recognize you guys for that? I got to assume they do.
And to be really, honest with you, it's hard to, really track exactly, what the impact could be for your business. But what I would tell people listening to this is this: you don't necessarily, to be a community champion, you don't necessarily have to go throw an entire concert, because I can tell you this, it's heavy. It takes a lot of my time and energy and my team's time and energy. And the cool thing is it's so much fun. We love doing it. But if you're looking to get started, you don't have to do that. What I would do is,
so what's some of the first things you would do?
Yeah, if I was just getting started in this, I would actually partner with someone who's already maybe doing an event and sponsor it, and then co-sponsor it and ask them and say, hey, look, could I, sponsor this event and actually invite my audience to it and be a co-sponsor of the event, taking some of the heavy lift off of throwing an entire event, right? Especially with, pandemic and coming out of this pandemic at this point, live events are just not happening, or very, very few far and in between. So when we're done and over with this and we can get back to live stuff, I would dive into partnering with someone who's already done one, so that you can actually learn how to throw the event. And what's going to happen is that you're going to be positioning yourself as a community advocate for the small person, right? And supporting and it has zero to do with selling homes. But
it's funny. I'm looking at this. You know who this is, right?
Oh yeah,
That's Network. So Nick is actually going to be one of our other speakers, Nick Nathan, and he's going to talk about how to become a celebrity, a brand expert, how to brand yourself as a celebrity expert. And what you're talking about is the very, very beginning stages of that. And I remember you saying to me probably 2 years ago or a year ago, I said to you, hey, what's the one thing I should be doing? And you said, publishing every day. I don't care if you just go on Facebook and just tell people, hey, how you doing? Here's what's going on with the weather. But getting in front of them and becoming a recognizable name. I think, when we used to grind, it was how many people do you know and how many people you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And over time, that shifted from not how many people you know, but how many people know you and are aware of you in the community. And I think what you're talking about is, there's 700 people that may not have been aware of you guys, but are now aware of you guys. So if you fast forward that, and now you go from you start to build yourself out as a community expert, or actually, getting started in, like, we're involved in the PTA, the Knights of Columbus, all different kinds of community, first responder stuff. Once they start to do that and establish themselves as a community resource, if you will, right? What's the biggest hurdle from going from like doing 10 or 12 transactions to get up to like where you're doing 25 and you can make that jump into full time?
Well, it's personal growth, period. I mean, if we, leadership is a big word.
Say that again. You said personal growth. So do you mean like, do I have to go buy something, or is it between the 5-inch span between my ears?
Well, it's whatever. It's definitely between the 5-inch span between your ears. But in order for you to grow, I mean, I've been investing in myself, since I can. The first time I ever invested in personal growth was in 2001. I went to a Tony Robbins event.
Yep.
And some of these events can get expensive, but the cool thing is right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of this stuff is free online. I was literally at an event last weekend, a 3-day event. It was completely virtual. And I mean, I took a bunch of notes, and I'm constantly sharpening my pencil. I'm constantly investing in personal growth, because I believe that if you can't lead yourself, it's all about leading yourself. There's no way that you're going to be able to lead others. You can't fake that. That whole, bullshit about fake it till you make it. You can't do that with leadership. It doesn't work there. You might be able to get away with it, with a buyer or a seller, and not being an expert for a little bit, but even that's going to catch up to you eventually. I think that we can talk all day about training, we talk all day about that, but if you can't develop yourself and become a better version of yourself every day, every week, every year over year, then you're not going to be able to lead others, and others frankly aren't going to follow you, because they're not going to buy into your bullshit, because that's really all it's going to be. So just really digging into to that, the personal growth piece, and then, just being committed. I would just say that the commitment piece is something that we've been focused on. It's not that we're not doing trainings on scripts and dialogues. Sure, we need to arm ourselves like, assassins as real estate agents in a good way, meaning with the right dialogue, so that we can get the marbles out of our mouth and speak,
communicate,
and articulate your value so that you can win customers. Of course, that's a given. If you're not out, constantly sharpening your sword, it's going to catch up with you. But having the discipline to make the small micro commitments that are going to help you reach your goals is what's going to get you there. It's
making a shift in the mindset long before you take all the tools out of the toolbox, which you take your weapons out and you take out your guns. Your brain's got to be in the right spot, and your attitude, your approach, your expectations, I think, were what you used to teach me years ago. I mean, like you said, we're giving out 30 to 40 of the literally world-class speakers and like yourself, who've actually said, listen, I don't want anything. I'm just here to share, which is actually, I said it in the very beginning of this interview, is the more I looked for stuff about Al Stasek, the less I could find. The more I found about your team, the more I found about what you did for the community, the more I found like testimonials from companies and stuff like that. So now we start to get our head in that space. What do you think? I have, and for the people that don't know, they can go download this. It's a free giveaway when you get an all access pass, is the 10X personal success formula, which is 10xpsf.com, where it's going to teach you how to create that mindset or how to create that discipline. But Al, if you had to break it down for somebody to say, like, what are the 1, 2, 3 things that they could do to get their head in the right spot before they even get out of bed or get going in the morning or get to the office?
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to boil it down to commitments and micro commitments.
Yep.
And this is a reflection in all aspects, from, is it I need to get to the gym more? Is it I need more sales? Is it I need to increase in any of the aspects of your life, personal life, all that stuff, your relationships? It's going to boil down to commitments, right? And the quality of those different aspects of your life and business are going to be a direct reflection of how committed you are or uncommitted.
I just want to ask a question. When you're saying committed, you're not saying committed to your broker or committed to your wife or your kids. It's your commitment to your word and yourself, correct?
Yeah. I mean, it boils down to, your commitments for every aspect. And it is, to all those things as well. But what I think the people that are on here are on here wanting to grow their business, their real estate.
Absolutely. Right.
So what I'm saying is that, you can go to all the trainings you want. You can go all of these things, but if you're not working on the micro commitments every single day in all these aspects, it's going to show up and it'll be it's glaringly obvious. And what it boils down to is what we say is the 100-0.
100-0.
At the beginning of this broadcast is that 100-0 means, when you talk about, the death of something, right?
Yeah.
What we talk about are the death of your excuses. Okay. Because everybody's got these excuses. I mean, when you talk about genocide, homicide, suicide, and to decide and cut off from everything else, we talk about burning the boats. We'll get to that later in the bonus section, I think is what it was. But what it boils down to is the death of your excuses. 100% accountability, 0 excuses, which means 100% commitment, to those micro commitments that you can commit to every day. Am I going to get to the gym and hit it 5 days a week or whatever your commitment, or sometimes 7? We're on an accountability group that you're a part of. I've been a part of for probably 6 or 7 years.
Right.
Of a group of committed individuals who are there lifting themselves up and checking in and just getting it done every single day. And it's no coincidence that they're all in really, really good shape. Right.
It's amazing. Like,
also no coincidence that you're having Nick Netton, who's part of that group, by the way. He's one of the speakers. He's amazing. I remember I'm friends with Nick right now.
Right.
I'm friends with him, but I remember the first time I saw him speak at the Exponential Growth Summit on stage.
Yep.
And I absolutely bought his product because it works. And it's right over there. The first book that he helped me publish.
You're looking at it. Yeah.
It was a number one seller on Amazon. So, I mean, investing into yourself and making those commitments and making a decision is really, really going to be the key to anyone's success, whether you're starting out trying to go from 1 to 10 transactions, 10 to 20 transactions. Of course, you're going to have different strategies when it comes to that. But getting clear on that and then committing to the plan is going to be the number one thing that people can do to see their success.
I want to point out number 2, and you said it, but you said it kind of descriptively, secretly, if you will. You just said we're in a group with, I think there's, what is there, 20 guys on that group or something like that, plus or minus. And what's funny is when I first got involved with that group, it was all just phone numbers, and I didn't know who these people were. And all of a sudden, I start Googling the phone numbers to figure out who the people are to match up the dots. And I realized it's Nick Nathan. And I'm like, wait a second. I met this guy like probably 15 years ago with Denise Swick, who actually, from Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, a good friend of mine, another great agent. She said, hey, I'm coming to New York. I'm going to be in your backyard. Come on. I want to introduce you to this guy who's like an Emmy award winning speaker. And I'm like, really? And so me and my wife went to go visit, and there's Nick Nathan, who is probably like you, the most down to earth, humble guy that, full blown, what we call a 10X Top Gun, 10X Top Gun like yourself. But I mean, he is at a whole nother level, but he's so down to earth. And the funny thing is, he's one of the first guys every morning to say, hey, I did 6 with the dog, or I did 5 with this, or I worked out here, or it's pouring rain, but I'm out still working out today. It reminds me to think of how important, and I'll ask you this, how important is that 5 to 8 people that you spend time with on a regular basis, Al? Like, like they say, your environment and the people you spend, you become like the environment and the people you spend the most time with. How does that work in your space? Or how does that work back? Actually, let me ask you a better question. How does that work in COVID? I know that the one tool we use is that accountability. How else do you do that in COVID where you can't physically go spend time in those environments?
Yeah. Well, you sign up and for the 10X real estate, and you start feeding your brain, and a couple cliche comments I guess we could use to describe this is that good. You have 2 wolves, and you have the good wolf and the bad wolf, and
and that voice in your head.
The boy, and which wolf is going to win? It's the wolf you feed the most. And so if you're going to be, tracking where your eyeballs are on a daily basis, because we get all these distractions, the goods and the bads of social media and being able to work virtually, are that with a click of a mouse, you could be on, some BS site reading news that really isn't going to change your trajectory in one way or another. And if you get sucked into those news articles or whatever it is, squirrel, right? And so, I would say, environment's more powerful than will.
Yep.
Even more
so.
Again.
Actually, say that again. That's huge. Environment's more powerful than will.
Well, you can, if you consistently are surrounding yourself. Here's what I've observed. Okay. The observation that I've made in coaching human beings is that the human beings who are seeing the most amount of success are surrounding themselves with the right environment. And as a result of that, they're creating their own environments with their own tribes, their sub-tribes, if you will, right? And it's all a trickle-down effect. And I can look at success and I can look directly in one direction, and it's predictable. You can predict somebody's success by the people that they're surrounding themselves with. What circles are they in? Are they in accountability groups? Are they in groups that are, encouraging people and pulling people up on a consistent basis? Are they within groups that are constantly adding value to others? Or are they following groups on Facebook that are putting, crass, look, I like a funny, humorous text or meme or all that every once in a while. I'm not going down a rabbit hole on any of these sites and arguing with somebody over Biden or Trump. I'm not going on sites and arguing with people or laughing on, just dumb stuff. I'm going to get my taste of it for a minute. Then I'm going to get back to feeding my soul with the right nutrients, right? And that all starts with the right environment and getting around the right people. And when I see people that are in bad spots, I know exactly where to look. What is their environment? And if they're, that's what our mom and dad, we never wanted to listen or think that they were right when they're like, you need to hang out with it's important that you hang out with the right crowd and don't hang out with the wrong crowd.
Ain't that the truth?
I can literally look back when I was in my early 20s and I was coming up, and there were some people I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I can tell you that my personal, professional life, my bank account all reflected it, like seriously. And so yeah, get around that right people that are gonna pull you up and feed your soul. And I like to call it that when you look around yourself at the people that you're in contact with most, they're either an asset or they're a liability. And you think of them as liabilities and assets. Get rid of your liabilities as much as you can and add more assets. And I think that ultimately you're going to live a more joyous life.
It's funny when you said that. As soon as you said it, it reminded me of this quote, and I remember you brought this to my attention years ago. Is great people talk about ideas, average people talk about things, small people talk about other people. Mm-hmm. And it's such a true to life situation. I happen to know, just from watching you and stuff like that and being in that accountability with those guys. What would you say, who do you think has made the biggest impact on you over the years?
Man, it's hard to point to one person when it comes to that. I have a group that I've surrounded myself that are of people that are smarter than me, that that pull me up, that check me, when I'm thinking that I'm right. I think that I'll give you some names, but really it boils down to a principle that I learned.
Yeah.
And the principle that I've learned is to always think that your belief might be wrong. We're these type A personalities who are entrepreneurs and drivers oftentimes are strong-willed, and we have opinions just like everyone else has opinions. But I think that, in thinking about things in an insightful manner,
yeah,
I'm open to learning, even when I think I'm right. If I can at least be aware of that and start thinking more insightful and listening with an insight, meaning I want to learn something.
So be willing to question yourself.
Yeah. What's that? Be
willing to question yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, that it could be misinterpreted as like always question yourself, but that's not really what I'm saying.
No. In other words, like seek out.
What I'm saying is listen for insight, listen to learn, not listen in judgment. And so, and everyone, can be a judger at times. That's just something that's kind of natural with the human being. But if you can have an awareness of that and how you're listening, and the people that taught me that are people like, Jay Kinder, Michael Reese, John Sheplack, John Kitchens,
yep.
Those are the four human beings that I go to.
Those are all guys that were invited.
That's my tribe right there. And I'm leaving some people off because from time, but those are the ones that I think that, that they're in my phone and I've learned the most from and have grown the most from. And the reason is because I've submitted to the fact that I could, I have to be open to being wrong about a belief and taking the emotion out of it. And really having that awareness of looking at it in a more logical way, and wanting to learn. So,
you mentioned Tony Robbins going to an event. I remember him, and I remember at a point in my career where I was in that. There's going to be times when you go through that career where you become the victim and you're surviving versus thriving. And I remember that. He said, he pointed it out, and it happened to be at the right time. You hear certain things at the right time. And he said, don't look at other people with envy and remorse. Look at them as more from a point of, here's where I can go. And here's the opportunity that's open to me. And here's somebody that's already blazed the path. Go find out what they're doing. Go find out how they're doing it and model them. And on that note, I just want to leave off with this. And Al, man, we really appreciate it. I'm going to just wrap this up in a second. But what do you think is the most important thing you'd say to a new agent or an agent that's out there that's maybe affected by COVID? Maybe their businesses, maybe they're doing 150 units a year, but it's been that way for 2 years and they just plateaued. What do you think is going to make, what's one thing you can share with somebody that would help them to get off a plateau, whether it's from zero to something or from where they are to the next level?
I mean, I think, what I've had to do, and I know that you more than anybody, I think would agree with this, is that, I've always had a coach since 2000 and, 21, or I'm 21, since 2001,
Yep.
when my first Tony Robbins seminar, I started leaning into people. And again, having to put my mindset in a place of being coachable,
Right.
which kind of goes along with what we were just talking about of
open for opportunity,
opening to learning something, opening to being, I coached for a long time, real estate agents.
Thank God, because that's where that's where we met.
And I can tell you that you were one of my favorites because you were open. And I can tell you this, and if we're just being totally honest,
Absolutely.
I did not enjoy coaching all the agents that I coached. There was a handful of them. And if I were to reach out and say a percentage, probably 60%, I could not wait to get on the call and help them. The other 40%, they weren't coachable. Sure, they reached into their wallet and stroked a credit card check to get the coaching or whatever, because maybe it seemed like a good idea whenever they saw a presentation on it or whatever, but they really didn't get the most out of it because A, sometimes they ghosted the call, or B, they were really just half listening to get through their call, and they weren't there to learn something. They were there to really just kind of put whatever their ideas through some kind of a filter to see what would stick and what wouldn't.
Right.
And so I would just say, if I was, talking to someone who's newer or trying to get started, get somebody that would agree to mentor you, and there's plenty of people on here that you can start to follow where, you may not have to pay for the coaching. There's a lot of stuff out there where you would have to pay. I mean, my coach that I coach with right now is $1,000 an hour. Of course, most agents aren't going to be able to afford a coach that charges that, but it's worth every single penny of that investment for me, right? But you don't have to start there. Look for people that you could partner with to get that coaching, and that'll pull you up to that next level and get yourself around some good people. That's what I would say.
Awesome. On that note, I just wanted to say, hey, if you can relate to Al's story, his journey of becoming a 10X real estate warrior and actually a 10X Top Gun expert, if you want to get to that level over the next 90, 120 days, you guys should head over to the 10X Real Estate Warrior Nation's weapons arsenal. It's actually where we're going to actually give you the tips, tricks, and strategies, and the actual secret behind, like, under the skirt. And by the way, this is something you have to pay for. We've kind of figured out that if we give you everything, Al just mentioned that there's 40% of the clients that he worked with that they just wrote the check. Just because they could write the check doesn't mean they were coachable or they were willing to be coached. Interestingly enough, we're going to give you the opportunity to be coached. You're going to have to pay a couple of dollars, but I will say this, you're going to pay pennies on the dollar in comparison to what Al and I have invested and these other coaches and mentors have invested, and they're going to transmit to you in a very succinct, very short, and a very packaged manner. Al, we appreciate you as always. We're going to head over to the VIP interview where we're going to talk a little bit about how did Al go from having a handful of people in his local market to building an organization with a couple of partners over how many agents now? 4,000 agents in the Honey Badgers.
Almost
right?
5,000 agents, yep.
Almost 4,000. So we're going to talk about, if you guys want to learn how to build a team and what it takes, the mindset, the attitude, the approach, and the expectations that Al has on a regular basis. Most humble guy in real estate, Al Stasek. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you, Sean.